Coming up, the woman still waiting for answers over her brother's death 23 years on. Details next.
Now, the latest ITV News Central with Matt Teal and Samina Ali Khan.
Hello, welcome to the programme. Coming up tonight, 23 years later and still no answers. The woman desperate to know what happened to her brother.
Why this could become the norm for drivers for years when High Speed 2 comes to town.
Wildlife worries as fly tippers take to the towpath to get rid of their rubbish.
And join me in a few minutes when I'll be exploring some of the Midlands' hidden underground spaces.
Good evening. A woman whose brother was murdered 23 years ago says she and her family are living in torment because his killer has never been caught. Anthony Thompson was stabbed as he walked home from a funeral one night.
The police investigation has never been closed, and today detectives said the case is regularly reviewed, along with all other unsolved murders. Mark Goff reports.
Anita Ward dreads this time of year. A photo of her and her brother Anthony when they were children is a comfort. But tomorrow, it's 23 years to the day since Anthony, then in his 20s, was murdered in Wolverhampton. He was stabbed late one night as he walked back from a funeral on this road in Low Hill. But 2 decades on, his killer hasn't been caught. For his sister Anita, the torment continues.
It's not like I want the people punished anymore. I want answers. I want to know why. Who? Why? That's the main thing to me. Why?
Their father and mother have now both died without seeing their son's killer caught.
Someone knows. Mum and Dad went to the grave. Family members are ill. Don't want anybody else to go to the grave. Not knowing who and why.
Detective Inspector Gary Plant from West Midlands Police said the murder of Anthony Thompson is subject to a periodic review, as are all unsolved cases. These cases are never closed, and should any new evidence come to light, a full review would be conducted. But Anita fears that she'll never know how or why her brother met his death on this road that cold February night 23 years ago. Mark Goff, ITV News, Wolverhampton.
An investigation into bullying at hospitals in Worcestershire has been launched following a meeting with Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt yesterday. It comes weeks after 4 A&E consultants at the Alexandra Hospital in Redditch resigned. The Trust, which also runs Kidderminster Hospital and Worcestershire Royal Hospital, said the consultants were invited to a meeting today to discuss their reasons for leaving. Redditch MP Karen Lumley says the independent inquiry must be carried out as soon as possible.
To lose one consultant, is doable at this time, but to lose them all is not great. And I think we deserve some answers, and the Secretary needs to know how concerned the people of Redditch actually are. I have had people come to me over the last few weeks complaining of the bullying culture, and it's important that we get to the bottom of this. People should be able to work in an environment that's safe and that they feel protected in, and I think that's important. I think it needs to be done fairly quickly.
The former home of Hereford United has been taken over by a new team that will play in the city from next season. The council has agreed a lease with the consortium behind Hereford Football Club. The deal comes after the collapse of Hereford United, which was wound up last year over mounting debts.
A blind man from Fenton in Staffordshire joined campaigners at Downing Street today to highlight his concerns over road safety. They handed in a petition calling for a public inquiry into shared spaces. This modern street design means there's less distinction between the road and pavement. It's supposed to reduce congestion and make roads safer. But campaigners say shared spaces are harder to navigate and are dangerous for blind people.
As far as I'm concerned, it's effectively a Berlin Wall. I can't use the city centre.
Can you imagine if you were told you could not access your town centre, how that would feel? If you've been accessing it all your life and then suddenly you can't go in there. Suddenly you have to wait for a knock on the door to take you out to go shopping or to see your friends in that area. This is taking blind people back to the 40s, 50s, 60s.
More than 1,500 jobs are expected to be created after a plan to build 500 homes in Birmingham was approved. Persimmon Homes is investing £100 million to develop the site of the old Selly Oak Hospital. It'll take around 7 years to complete. Services have been moved away from Selly Oak since the QE Hospital opened in 2010.
Road closures, diversions and very long traffic queues. That's what some motorists in Warwickshire could face for up to 8 years once construction starts on HS2, the new high-speed rail line that will link Birmingham to London.
Coventry City Council says it's worried that Warwick University and a nearby business park could suffer with hundreds of HGVs using roads around Kenilworth to access the site. Andy Bevan has the details.
From 2017, the tranquility of these Warwickshire fields could be replaced by the rumble of heavy traffic. Hundreds of lorries are set to ferry earth from the construction site of HS2, where it passes near Kenilworth. The first stage of the high-speed line, which will carry passengers between London and Birmingham, will take between 5 and 8 years to build, which could mean almost a decade of disruption. There are currently substantial roadworks along the A429 Kenilworth Road, which links the town to Coventry. Drivers face a wait of up to 5 minutes at temporary traffic lights on the junction of Stoneleigh Road and Gibbet Hill Road, which leads to the University of Warwick. But at a recent HS2 Select Committee hearing, government lawyers admitted that when the construction lorries arrive, things could get much worse.
The government's own predictions say there'll be about 1,125 lorries along this section of Kenilworth Road every single day during construction. That's the equivalent of one every 76 seconds, 24 hours a day.
HS2 passes between Warwick University and Kenilworth, but many surrounding roads, both major and minor, would be used for construction access, with closures and diversions in operation for months or even years. Coventry City Council says it's concerned by the plans, and a delegation has travelled to London today to petition the HS2 Select Committee over the scheme. The council told ITV News, "We're concerned that Warwick University and Westwood Business Park can continue to operate effectively during the construction period and the impact on residents. The information we have is not currently robust enough." But the Transport Secretary in Kenilworth yesterday to inspect the site of the town's new rail station on the existing network chose to play down the fears over construction traffic for HS2.
Well, look, you can't build major infrastructure without causing inconvenience. I do realise that, and I understand the concerns, and that's one of the reasons why at the moment the committee that is looking into the whole of HS2 is looking into all these aspects.
Back in the Kenilworth Road traffic queues, though, it's a very different story.
It causes a lot of problems. We'd probably have to take some diversions.
And all the diversions will be crowded.
Yeah, because everybody will be doing the same thing.
I have young adult children who are just learning to drive, and the thought of these country lanes with them, in the early years of their driving experience and heavy lorries, that's not a good mix.
There's still much waiting to do before HS2 construction is due to start in 2017, but if the plans stay as they are, it could be a very long time before drivers get to see this around here. Andy Bevan, ITV News.
Now you're watching ITV News Central. Still to come on the programme, the Staffordshire scientists working on the next generation of bionic limbs.
And what's lurking in these tunnels below Birmingham's mailbox? Lucy's been to have a look. The hundreds of miles of canals in England and Wales are loved by many for their unique blend of nature and history and more than 2,500 listed structures that can be found along their banks.
Apparently, though, not everyone appreciates them. Fly tipping is an increasing problem, and not just for the people who live there. From Coventry Canal, Callum Watkinson reports.
Home to an estimated 8,000 boaters, cherished as important public spaces by many more. Britain's canals and the land around them are increasingly being used as dumping grounds by others who can't be bothered to put their rubbish where it's supposed to go.
We've got an increased awareness of fly tipping recently, both in volume and in type. The fly tipping is obviously a nuisance because it's unsightly, but the use of our bins is then becoming a problem for our boaters. Our boaters pay an annual licence fee to use and have the facilities available to them, but when the bins are being filled up with other people's rubbish, they can't use them.
Waste from builders, waste from gardens, and waste from people's lunches. The Canal and Rivers Trust is a charity that can ill afford the thousands of pounds it's spending every year cleaning up other people's mess.
It costs us £300 per visit, and that's money that could be spent elsewhere, improving the wildlife and the habitat, and also the environment for our boaters and people to use along the towpath.
And it's not just two-legged users of the towpath who pay a price for the laziness of others. Canals are a haven for many species of wildlife. And while litter is an eyesore for people, for animals it can be deadly. This baby hedgehog only just survived an encounter with a discarded tyre.
It's a major problem to wildlife. We get a lot of injuries. We get leg injuries, we cuts, we get broken legs, we get broken wings, we get animals stuck in tin cans, the choking of them swallowing items, and even being poisoned with people dumping cans with stuff in them. The hedgehog actually got caught in the wire rim around the tyre. If we hadn't rescued it, it would have just choked to death.
So from all creatures, small and great, the view from the towpath is pretty clear. Our home is not a rubbish bin. Please take your litter with you. Callum Watkinson, ITV News.
Scientists at Keele University in Staffordshire are helping to develop a new generation of bionic limbs which could change the lives of amputees.
They're working on making a prosthetic hand that can sense pressure and temperature and send messages back to the brain. It's in collaboration with experts at Newcastle University. Greg Eastill reports.
It's being hailed as the closest thing yet to replicating the human hand, a machine that can match the movements of our fingertips, all controlled using signals from real muscles elsewhere in the body. The work by a team of scientists, including researchers at Keele University, providing hope to people for whom these tasks are hard to perform.
People who have lost their limb because of an accident, or they are born with limb loss. But not only those sort of groups of people can benefit from this technology. Other sort of people who have some abnormalities in sensation could, in theory, benefit from this in the long term.
So how does it work? To demonstrate, the team allowed me to become one of the first members of the public to try it out. The process begins by fitting special sensors to the arm. By performing a series of exercises, the bionic hand begins to learn the muscles' movements on my forearms that correspond to particular hand movements. Each gesture produces its own waveform signature for the bionic hand to remember. Once it's been calibrated, the remote sensors on my forearm send a signal to the bionic hand, meaning that when I pinch the fingers on my hand, the remote hand pinches its fingers too. The ultimate aim, to marry a hand like this to the nerve endings of a real arm, producing accurate senses of touch, feel and movement.
With the development of new electronics and new microchip, we would be able to go inside the nerves and pick up the actual translation of brain pulses. That would give us a much more accurate representation of movement intention. So
the team say that goal's maybe another 7 to 10 years away, but the results so far look A-OK. Greg Eastill, ITV News.
It's incredible, isn't it? come on some distance from the Bionic Man.
Just a bit, yes. It's all very sci-fi, isn't it? That's what it reminds you of.
Yeah, very good
stuff. Now, with growing business links between the Midlands and China, more and more people here are trying to master one of the world's most difficult languages.
Yes, the Prime Minister has also urged teenagers to look beyond the traditional French and German when making their language choices. So, a new app has been developed to make learning Mandarin easier. David Woodland reports.
There's a mountain at the top, so you know when I'm on the top of a mountain, I'm at the top, and the sun sets, there's how you write sunset. I just want to watch it till I'm 100 years old. That's how I say years old. Sway. Sway.
A 19th century missionary to China said learning Mandarin was so hard it was for those with the memories of angels and the lives of Methuselah. But then they didn't have the benefits of this app. Aimed at 11 to 15-year-olds, it uses a heady mix of comic books and app tech to keep their interest.
There are so many characters. There are about 1,000 characters. It's very easy to get sort of bored with all the characters, and so it's good the way they've put it into a story.
Chapters in the martial arts story are invented and drawn in, appropriately enough, an old silk mill. Beijing-born Zhang Xisao says the app is intended to teach how to read and write, but the comic book authors make no bones about the long march ahead of any student.
Very difficult. I think it's even difficult for Chinese, It wasn't easy for kids, think about it, how many characters there is, and the writing and the speaking is separate two things. So it's quite a demanding thing to learn.
I think it helps you both pick up the characters more quickly, and what's really tough with Mandarin is actually remembering them once you've learnt them. There are hundreds of the characters, and it's easy to forget them. So what we've tried to do is create a story which breaks down the complex characters bit by bit and then pulls it together in a memorable way.
And Xisao hopes each pen stroke she makes will help break down barriers between her home country and the UK.
Oh, well, that's another thing I would hope so, because we are just people, we have the same emotions and same problems, and we're looking for the same things, really.
And Ben is hoping for one universal thing: some payback for the effort they've put in.
100 million people worldwide learning Chinese, so a small slice of that would be great.
E is 1.
How are your language skills, Sam?
Not bad, but I was thinking Hindi and Spanish maybe would be the next two, wouldn't they?
Better than mine.
Yeah. Let's stick to English, shall we?
Better than Herefordshire. Right, OK, Lucy's joined us in the studio. Now, Lucy, normally when you're here...
you're speaking English.
We're going to do English. Normally we talk about the weather, we blame you, but today even you're getting away from it, is that right?
I am, yes. Usually for my Love Local strand of features, I'm out in the elements, enjoying all of our amazing weather, but this time I'm getting as far away from the weather as I can. I've been discovering an underground world in the Midlands. I'm talking tunnels and caves, spaces that remain hidden from everyday life, but that have played a crucial part in Midlands life. Now, hopefully you'll enjoy this little adventure. Here's Love Local.
Under the hustle and bustle of our busy cities and serene countryside, there's lots to see.
Birmingham's mailbox currently undergoing a £50 million makeover, but as its new look takes shape, there's a permanent reminder of its history below us. A 400-metre tunnel linking the mailbox to New Street Station.
The mailbox was a former Royal Mail sorting office. Built in 1970, it was the largest building in Birmingham at the time. It was also the largest mechanised letters and parcels sorting office in Europe. So plans were put in place to keep things running quickly and smoothly.
The House of Commons passed a bill to allow this tunnel to be built. That meant that mail could be moved safely, quickly and securely across the city. It hasn't been used since the mid-90s, but it remains intact.
It runs from the mailbox under Suffolk Street, Queensway and John Bright Street to New Street Station, stretching 3/4 of a mile, something that historian Chris Upton says was crucial.
Well, Birmingham always has problems with its congestion in the city centre, so anything that puts the services underground and gets them out of the traffic was great, and it obviously cost a vast amount in cash and engineering terms to push all those services, the throughput of parcels and letters off the street and down into the bowels of the city.
But for some, it wasn't just a means of avoiding traffic.
Apparently, because the tunnel is so secure, jewellers used to post diamonds to themselves overnight instead of securing them in their own vaults, because it was just safer here.
Although it's spookily quiet now, this tunnel would have been a hive of activity.
All those trucks, which they called brutes, would have been trundling back and forth, rattling away, and of course the sound echoing down the tunnel as well, which only exaggerates it. For nearly 30 years it served the purpose perfectly, really, and did a lot of the stuff that would have got in the way of the way the city works.
And serving a purpose 50 miles east is Nottingham's unique network of caves. More than 550 have been discovered, but it's thought that many more remain hidden.
Take me down, 6 underground.
Carved out of sandstone, some of the caves are open to the public, but it's the hidden ones that are most intriguing, which is why this 3D footage from the Nottingham Cave Survey is so fascinating. These caves are behind Willoughby House, or Paul Smith as it's better known. They're an early example of so-called gentlemen's caves, where parties would have been a regular occurrence. It almost feels like it could be home to Batman, but head east and that literally is the case. Here at Tattershill Cars in Lincolnshire are several bat caves.
This ancient woodland is a site of special interest and was once home to the famous 617 Dambuster Squadron of the RAF. In the Second World War, around 2,000 airmen were based here, and they often used these shelters in the event of attack.
Today, the shelters are still providing protection, this time to a slightly smaller species, endangered bats.
The escape hatch at the far end we've closed off to allow the air to not circulate so much, so that it provides a sump of cold air within there. And then the front door here, we have a grill at the top so the bats can still get in, but again it reduces the airflow within. And then we've put in boxes.
So the main purpose of these shelters is to provide the perfect environment for the bats to hibernate in, which at this time of year is exactly what they're doing. But the shelters are also attracting visitors to the site, so keeping the camp history alive.
We have a steady flow of visitors through the woods, bringing their dogs for a walk or just visiting the woodland. And of course there's something else for them to see now. The air raid shelters. And these have been sort of in a semi-derelict state ever since the end of the war. Now they've got a new lease of life, and so they've been looked after, they've been turned into bat caves, and we're going to see them here for a long, long while.
The bat shelters keeping history and wildlife alive. That's the end of our underground adventure. But if you know of anywhere or anyone who we should feature on Love Local, then please get in touch. You can tweet me at LucyITV or email centralweather@itv.com.
Interesting stuff, hey? And I think the only place to be is underground over the next few days. We've got rain on the way. Here's your forecast.
What's in store for today? ITV Local Weather, sponsored by Centre Parks.
Hello, well, a brilliant picture for you tonight. So frosty start to the day. Thank you very much to Steve Stain for taking this one in North Warwickshire for us. Central weather at itv.com is the address if you'd like to send us any of your pictures. We're particularly looking for signs of spring, so please do get in touch. So then, the weather at the moment is fairly topsy-turvy. Sometimes it feels like spring, but certainly over the next few days we're going to see more cloud and rain. At the moment we've got a cold northwesterly airflow. That will change as we head through the day tomorrow, but we are going to see this cloud and rain build on this frontal system here. So the change will begin as we move through tonight. Initially, temperatures are going to drop through this evening, and then they'll rise again by breakfast time as the cloud builds and we see some patchy light rain. And this really sets the scene for a wet Wednesday. It's going to be dreary, grey first thing tomorrow morning. Lots of misty, low-grade cloud with outbreaks of rain on and off through the day. There will be lots of dry intervals as well. Temperatures a little bit higher and the winds slightly ease.
ITV Local Weather, sponsored by Centre Parks.
Time for a reminder of tonight's top stories on ITV News Central before we go this evening. The sister of a man from Wolverhampton murdered 23 years ago this week says someone must know who killed him. Anthony Thompson was on his way home from a funeral when he was stabbed in the Low Hill area of the city.
An investigation into bullying at hospitals in Worcestershire has been launched following a meeting with Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt yesterday. It comes weeks after 4 A&E consultants at the Alexandra Hospital in Redditch all resigned on the same day.
And there's a warning: motorists in Warwickshire could face road closures, diversions and delays for up to 8 years once construction starts on the High Speed 2 rail project.
As always, there are further updates and more details on our stories online. Just go to itv.com/central. The national and international news is coming up next, but from all the team here, have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.